Hi, I'm Cassidy at Growing with the Griffins, and today we're going to talk about creating a garden map, measuring and drawing your yard. After you've created your vision board and assessed your property, you need to visualize the space. One option is to draw a rough sketch of your yard on a piece of paper and call it good. I, however, find knowing the exact amount of space I have makes planning a lot easier. It helps me save money and it helps me buy the exact amount of things that I need. Imagine yourself in Home Depot. You know you want to make a compost system. So you're standing in the lumber section and you're trying to do mental math. You're trying to figure out how much you're going to need. That is always a recipe for disaster. What if instead you walked into Home Depot with the exact list of measurements and materials that you needed and you knew exactly what you wanted to buy? That is what planning and creating a garden map is going to help you do. When we bought our first house, we had no idea where to start with our yard. We'd been apartment dwellers up until then and only had a small porch and a few pots. I had a collection of indoor plants, but that was it. Taylor had just watched a video on YouTube about permaculture design and using the satellite picture of your yard to design your garden space. I had just finished drafting renovation plans for our basement, so I thought, why not do the same for the garden? I had to tape many sheets of 8 by 11 graph paper together, 70 to be exact. The experience showed me that getting accurate measurements allows for effective planning. I know exactly how many seeds I need to start, how many crops I can grow, and where I can put them. I ordered an exact amount of seeds and overall had a pretty good first season of growing flowers. I'd never grown flowers until then, so I was pretty proud of myself. In our current rental house, we were able to grow a very small cut flower garden in the side yard next to the driveway. When we moved here, I had to order my seeds right away, so I had no time to figure out how much space I had and what I could do with it. Needless to say, I'm drawing the garden for the next growing season. Here's what you need to start drawing your garden. Step number 1, the materials you will need. You'll need a measuring tape. We love the 100-foot DeWalt fiberglass measuring tape. It's nice to have a flexible measuring tape when you're measuring uneven spaces. A notebook and pen to write down measurements. You will not be able to remember them. Even if you think you will, it's best not to chance it. Graph paper. I bought this 11 by 17 graph paper from Amazon. Next time I'll buy something without borders. You'll see why later. Drawing pencil, nothing fancy, just something you can draw lightly with. An eraser and a landscape template, which is optional. I bought one from Amazon. Step number 2, take your measurements. Find the straight line in your yard that's not going to move. It will most likely be your house, but it could be something else like a fence or concrete patio. Use that straight line as your starting point. Base all your other measurements off that line. In this example, I used the house. I measured the length of the house, and from there, measure from the corners of the house to find my other measurements. From there, you want to start with your big measurements. For example, you want the length of a house, from the house to the back of the property yard, from the house to the right side of the property yard, from the house to the left side of the property yard. If your yard is odd shaped, break it up into chunks. You will need a lot of measurements. For example, in my case, I had to measure the patio, but the corners of the patio were cut off, so I had to figure out the angles. The beds were odd shaped, so I had to take a width measurement every yard or so and use those as my points of reference for the angles. Sometimes when you draw things, you have to be creative. I also like to add in all the things I already have or the client has, like chairs, benches, tables, raised beds. If there's a sprinkler system, I like to draw that in too. It helps with designing garden spaces later. I like to find a fixed point to measure from where I'm figuring out where current plants and trees are in a space. In this project, the 2 big trees were near the corners of the yard, so I used the fence on 2 sides to find where the tree was on my graph paper. This step could take you a few days, depending on how big your yard is, but stick with it. It's going to make all the steps that follow much easier. I recommend making a rough sketch of your garden in your notebook so that when you're going through and writing down your measurements, you can write the measurement in the picture. And that's so helpful for later when you have these random weird notes about what the measurement is for. It's helpful to see where it is on the picture and you can figure out what it's for. Step number 3, create your map. This is my favorite part. The kids are in bed, it's a quiet evening, I've got my pencil, ruler, eraser, and sheets of graph paper. First, pick your scale. Because of the size of the yard, I already have to tape 4 sheets together. I'm drawing in a 1/4 inch scale. This means that each box on the paper represents one foot. This makes drawing very easy. I love my scale ruler and would not draft or draw spaces without it. Second, take your longest measurements, most likely the length and the depth of the yard, and make sure you have enough space on your paper. Now that you know how much space you need, you can set up your graph paper. You might have to tape pieces together like me. So here's the moment of truth. You're going to draw your first line. Draw the length of the house. From there, draw from the corner of the house to the back fence on the right and also on the left. There you go. The yard I'm drawing is pretty square, so I'm fortunate. If yours is not, you will need to take multiple measurements at different points. Remember, drawing a garden space is forgiving. You don't have to be perfect, just within the range. Once you have your space drawn out on the page, start adding the details. The patio or deck, the side yards, the currant beds you want to keep, trees or bushes you want to keep, trellises, and the sprinkler system. You have to be creative to measure that one. Recommendation for trees. I measure where the trunk is as well as the spread. This helps me plan if and how many shade plants I should plan for. For measuring the spread, I measure it on the ground by looking up and walking until I'm out from under the tree. Once everything is drawn in and you feel good about it, it's time for the next step. Note, when you're doing this for the first time, expect to have a few rough drafts. This is a skill that takes some practice. Now that we've done all that we can, it's time to move into the next step, which is designing your garden space. Check out our next video to find out how to do that. If you enjoyed this video, give us a like and subscribe to our channel.